I'm sorry I was late for the debate. I was actually out in the heartland of one of the communities of resistance to water charges out in Coolock, and having come back, I'm sorry I'm not still there, because I have to say that the reality of life in working class communities in Dublin, in districts and towns in every village of this country, is a million miles away from some of the nonsense that's spewed from the government benches. And it gives me no pleasure to say that most of that nonsense is emanating from the mouths of Labour deputies. You really have become the whipping boy of this government. Where are your Fine Gael blue shirt colleagues present in this? We had Minister Kelly last night leading the charge, and other ministers who are not even in this department coming up to take up the challenge here today. And while I didn't get to hear Pat Rabbitte, I've heard, I suppose, the success of his stunt, where he is featuring now in all of the media coverage of grabbing the headlines on this. Well, I think he'll rue the day on that one, because Minister Rabbitte might think he can compare people to rats who follow some Pied Piper, but it belies a reality and a lack of understanding of the real battle that's taking place in communities around the country. People are following nobody but their own instincts and their own understanding and direct experience, that unless they make a stand on this issue, they will be faced with monstrous bills into the future and the very real prospect of a public water supply being privatised. Now, I think the conduct of Minister Kelly last night, of getting up and lecturing Irish people, talking about people having to understand the need to pay for things, how dare he propose to put that message to people? Irish people know that. We have paid for public services through our central taxation system. We have paid through one of Europe's highest form, actually, of indirect taxation, which means the poorest people actually pay the most. And the fact that ye have decided to embark on a Robin Hood in reverse of using our taxes to pay the debts of other people that were never the responsibility of ordinary people is, to be quite honest, an absolute and utter disgrace. Where do you think the public water supply came from in the first place? It came off the back of taxpayers. Where do you think the reduction in leakage in counties like South Dublin, who were able to implement double-figure reductions, came from? It came from investment from the state. And you talk about savings being made. Do you not know that savings being made in Ringsend are being made not because of efficiencies, but because they're cutting out best practice environmental considerations and doing only half the job that's promised? So your figures and your information doesn't stack up. And actually, it's not the only thing you're contradicting yourselves on, because on the one hand, we're supposed to believe that everybody is coming over to your point of view. They're happily signing up and seeing the logic in the scenario. But on the other hand now, you're moving into vicious forms of threats and intimidation, because you know that you've lost the battle of the hearts and minds of ordinary people on this. Threatening letters going out to people in the voluntary housing sector, warning them, in organisations like Clúid, for example, where a group of tenants from Drogheda were in touch with me this morning. A family of 6 in a 2-bedroom apartment, a Vietnamese woman in a basement, and a family in another dwelling in between, getting a letter telling them that their terms of their tenancy is that they have to pay this agreement. Now, how in God's name, when local authorities are facing challenges in Europe over the condition of local authority houses, are they supposed to go into an area of collecting and being water charges collectors as well? It's an absolute impossibility. And you know, the reality is that you can't rule against the will of the people, and you haven't got the will of the people on this one. And you know, I think you know it, and maybe the Labour Party have given up the ghost and haven't believed that you're going to return nobody, so you might as well throw the gauntlet in this, because if you're going the way you're going, you certainly are. I know a constituent who rang this morning, who had rang the Minister's office this morning and was told by his staff to F off and have the phone hung up on them.
Minister, please. You
see, methinks the poor Minister doth protest too much, and it does indicate the reality is here is that the Irish people are off there.
Minister, please.
Talking down people, Minister, doesn't impress anybody, and it is in akin to the antics of Minister Kelly's office when a citizen ran.
Please stop.
I really don't think I need to say anything. I think the Minister has made the point for me. Irish people are off their knees on this, they're loving it, and you're the ones who are going to lose out on this one.